Good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar, Student Safety, Door to Door. For more than 20 million youngsters, each day begins and ends with a trip on a bus. In addition, 10% of all K through 8th graders walk or bicycle to school. Other students are driven to and from school. The greatest risks to students occur not only while riding the bus, but also while walking to and from school and walking to and from the school bus or auto drop-off. The purpose of this program is to provide an overview of student safety during the trip to and from school. During this program, our presenter will discuss creating a safe student travel environment. The key topics to be covered include traveling to school, safe walking to school, designing, loading, and unloading areas, route selection, safe pickup and drop-off locations, bus stop and off-site safety, school bus safety, and finally, bus occupant safety. The presenter for today's program is Dr. Carl Berkowitz. Dr. Berkowitz has over 50 years of transportation and traffic engineering experience. He has served as a litigation consultant and held various positions in industry, government, and higher education. Dr. Berkowitz has extensive experience in planning, design, safety, security, construction, maintenance, operations, and management. He currently holds a bachelor's in civil engineering and an MBA in industrial management from the City College of New York, a master's in science and transportation planning, and a PhD in transportation planning and engineering from NYU Poly. In addition to his work involving pedestrians in virtually every form of transportation and its safety, including aviation and maritime, Dr. Berkowitz has written numerous reports and articles for major publications, chaired task forces, appeared on national television, newspapers, and radio, and made numerous scholarly presentations worldwide. He holds memberships in many transportation engineering and standards professional associations. Dr. Berkowitz's areas of expertise include pedestrian passenger accidents, passenger terminal and station accidents, school bus and transit bus accidents, subway and passenger rail accidents, passenger on track accidents, bicycle and motorcycle accidents, passenger collisions, and slip, trip, and fall accidents. Dr. Berkowitz has asked that we take questions throughout today's program. If you have a question, please use the chat or Q&A feature found on the right-hand side of the screen to submit your question, and we'll make sure they get answered in the order in which they come in. Tomorrow morning, I'll send out an email with a link to the archived recording of this program, as well as a copy of the PowerPoint presentation. We do ask that you take time to fill out the survey that will appear on your screen after today's program is over. I now invite you to sit back, relax, and enjoy. I'm going to turn the presentation over to our distinguished guest, Dr. Carl Berkowitz. Carl, the program's all yours.
Thank you very much, Matt. Let's get right into it. You discussed the topics. Interestingly enough, this first slide we just inserted this morning. This is the headline in the Florida edition of the New York Post, believe it or not, and it concerns school bus safety, and this was precipitated by an intended strike on the part of bus drivers in New York City, and I was very surprised to learn how many accidents actually occur annually, and this is shown in the article that there are approximately 1,700 accidents a year with just New York City school bus operations. And of those, 900 every year other than 2011, prior years, about an equal number of injuries. This was quite surprising to me, and you'll see why as we go through the presentation. School bus transportation is relatively new. The first school bus started operating in England in 1827, and there's a picture of it, believe it or not, and it carried 25 students. The bus system safety, from the point of view of safety and of engineers involved in safety, The primary responsibility of the system is to carry our students safely, conveniently, and efficiently, and in a reliable manner. And, of course, physical safety of students is vital, and this was brought to our attention with the unfortunate experiences which had nothing to do with transportation in Connecticut just recently. In terms of safety, some people think about the bus, but it's really more than just the bus. It's getting from the home to the bus, or boarding the bus, or walking from home to school and return. This is a total system, and anything can happen, and does happen, unfortunately. The bus operations, for example, are contracted or leased, or in other cases are purchased by the school district. About 40% of all school districts contract out their bus services. According to the National Academy of Science, and these are some early buses, school buses on the bottom, according to the National Academy of Science, they feel that buses, from their studies, is the safest way of getting students to and from school in a safe manner. And it's the safest mode of transportation for students. Let's go through some of the facts concerning school bus operations. It is believed that because of the extensive school bus operations we have in the United States, if we didn't have this extensive operation, there'd be 17 million more cars around schools every morning and afternoon. The school buses carry 26 million students per day, and that results in 10 billion trips per year and approximately 4.3 billion miles per year traveled by school buses. Each year, over 800 school-age children die each year, walking, bicycling, or riding by private car to and from school, as compared to, unfortunately, 6 children dying in school bus accidents each year. This is an example of recent headlines around the United States concerning bus accidents. And when we have a bus accident, it's something horrific and something that is really disturbing to all of us. There are 480,000 buses in the United States, and they fall into these 4 categories, what we call the Type A, which is like a van, converted van. Type B is a small traditional school bus. Type C is what we see as a traditional school bus. And Type D is a school bus in a transit bus design. And how you can tell the difference between the traditional school bus and the transit school bus is that in the conventional school bus, the wheels are in front of the front door, and in the transit school bus, the wheels are in back of the front door, because in the transit school bus, the engine is in the rear, as opposed to in the conventional school bus where it's up front. There is also a lot of non-conforming school buses out there, and there's a few pictures of some non-conforming school buses. But anyone that uses a bus, even if it's a non-conforming vehicle, it also has to meet the standards applicable to regular school buses. The school buses today have many safety features which improves their safety and enhances the safety of the children, and these are the key safety features in today's school buses, and that's the color and the size of the bus, the height. The sides are reinforced. There are now flashing red lights. There are all sorts of mirrors, and of course we have the front arm and the stop arm on the bus, the stop sign and the front arm. According to the National Highway Safety Administration, they believe that school bus safety is the safest way of transporting children back and forth from school. But of course, accidents do happen no matter how safe any transportation system is. Now, an interesting phenomenon is taking place. From when I went to school, and maybe when some of you went to school, when I went to school, the majority, close to the majority of students either walked or biked to school. And today, 35 years ago, it was down to 48%, and now today we have less than 50% of the children walking or biking to school, although 40% of them live within 1 mile of walking to school. So why has there been a change in behavior from students walking and biking to school and them using other means of transportation? The reasons are basically been categorized into 4 areas: distance that the school is from home, the dangers of walking, and especially in the suburban and rural areas in our country, adverse weather conditions, and something that is concerning parents more and more each day, and that's fear of crime. What has happened is because of land scarceness and the cost of land, we see that schools are being sited in areas where land is less expensive and plentiful. And there's now a movement around the United States to try to change that and bring back the neighborhood school rather than the large regional facility which is built on the outskirts of a town, which necessitates every child to be bused to that school. In terms of the traffic dangers, the key traffic dangers involve speed, and by creating enforced speed zones, we try to lower the speed, and this has been found from studies to reduce pedestrian casualties by 70%. Another approach is by creating speed humps, which we in the traffic engineering field we call speed humps, and this also has a significant benefit in terms of reducing injuries and deaths of students in the communities where they are entering and accessing the school access transportation system. And of course, by creating sidewalks and bike paths around school areas and to schools, we also create a safe path for children to travel to and from school. And lastly, and equally as important, is having the police involved in patrolling those areas where students are traveling to and from school. In order to understand the safety issues, we have to understand the nature of walking and biking and how students are crossing streets, interacting with cars and buses, and how they make their way from home to school. And we need to observe the physical environment, and we also have to observe how the motorists interact in and around students. These are very important areas that we need to be concerned with. In terms of the physical environment, how they enter and exit the school, how the parents pick up and drop off, how the buses load and unload, where the bikes are parking, how are the sidewalks around the school, what are the intersections that the students have to cross to access the school, what is the school's speed zones, are there driveways along the pathway to the school, and have the students created informal pathways, sometimes called deer pathways, to get to school and from school. We see these beaten paths through the dirt. In terms of motorist behavior, do the motorists yield to the students, the pedestrians? Do they obey the speed limits? Do they follow pick-up and drop-off procedures? And do they park legally or illegally where students are entering and exit the school bus or the school's transportation system, whether it's walking, biking, or riding the school bus? In terms of the students, how many kids are walking? Are they crossing at marked crosswalks? Are they obeying crossing guards? Are they crossing streets safely? Are they facing traffic and walking along roadways? People, in general, don't know that in the traffic law, it requires bicyclists to move with traffic and pedestrians to walk against traffic. And are they able to walk on sidewalks? Are there contiguous sidewalks for their use? Where the requirements all begin for safe walking, begin begins with the school board. Are they developing safe walking plans? Do their plans include signs, signals, crosswalks, crossing guards, etc., and other things that should be in place to protect the students? Do they collaborate with local authorities, such as the highway department, the traffic department, the police department, to correct any unsafe conditions that are encountered by students on their attempt to access the school? Let's think in terms of the concept of safety for students. Students have difficulty in estimating the crossing gap. That is the time where they see an approaching vehicle until they cross to the other side. Their understanding of this experience is somewhat poor, and because of this poor understanding, can result in accidents. Don't forget, students are small, especially the youngest students, and for them to evaluate correctly and to see the vehicle operator could be some kind of a difficulty from a distance. Students also have difficulty applying attention to crossing and to approaching vehicles, and they also have difficulty perceiving the direction and sound and the speed of vehicles if they're not in their visual perspective. And here, below there are some other issues that you can take a look at your leisure that impact the safety of children crossing from one side of a street to another, or one side of a roadway, arterial or highway. In order to design for children's safety, it's important to have sidewalks and crosswalks, and that the number of lanes and traffic speed and traffic volumes that they have to cross are as minimal as possible, because every lane that they cross and every direction of traffic they cross creates a conflict for the students. In terms of the walking design, by designing proper walking, by separating the walkways for a safe trip and to the bus stop, we create safety for the students. The walkways need to be kept clear of obstructions and should be promptly repaired and maintained, also for the safety of students. This type of design will enhance the safety and mobility of children on their efforts to walk to school and also to access the school bus stop. The school bus, the walkways in the system to the school bus stop and to school is the safe space for students, and it should be separated from the vehicle traffic. There should be some kind of buffer between the walkway and the roadway. And there should be in every facility, no matter what the cost, there should be a walkway for the students. The students should not be required to access the system by walking in the roadways. There should be that walkway, sidewalks provided everywhere and on a continual basis, and preferably on both sides of the roadway, to make everything fully accessible.
Excuse me, Carl, what role does the school have in working with the local municipality to make sure that the walkways adhere to the rules and regulations?
You got to understand that both of them are government entities, so they all come, and unfortunately, school budgets are generally separated from the municipality's budget. But the municipality is also responsible for the children, and the municipality should be very responsive to the safety of children and should work with the school district to ensure that whatever systems are laid out, and they should be laid out cooperatively, should be safe.
Has it been your experience that there has been a good level of cooperation between those two entities?
In most cases.
Excellent. Okay. Yeah, there's just
Not
some
in all
questions
cases,
coming in.
Unfortunately.
Right. Why don't we continue on with the presentation? Thank you.
Another important area is lighting, and this is important, especially with the school days starting earlier and ending later. Students are ending up having to travel to school in the dark and having to come home in the dark, and this requires added concern, and also the importance of providing lighting so that students can be easily identified, and they can easily identify oncoming vehicles and things of that nature. When you think of the cost of one single pedestrian student accident versus the cost of providing facilities, the cost of facilities are negligible, and there is no budgetary reason that the students should not be case one concern for every entity that's involved in school transportation safety. In order to have a safe student crossing, you need to have awareness where the crossing is. There should be clarity, and the student should be visible. You don't want to place a crossing on a turn or a curve where there isn't a good line of sight to see where the students are crossing. Paths for students should be continuous. They shouldn't have to make unnecessary turns and crossings to put themselves into danger. And crossings and accessibility should be at intervals so that the wait to make the crossing is a minimum, because students are generally impatient, and if the crossings aren't made suitable to them, they won't use them in a proper manner. These are some of the things to take into consideration when considering that requiring students to cross a roadway. They should be, of course, they're vulnerable. They should be visible, and in most cases, we should try to avoid having students cross over the roadway to access a bus stop. The optimum situation is to have the students come from home as close as possible to the nearest bus stop without having to cross any roadways. And if they have to cross roadways, ensure it's done in a safe manner. And here is some details of what makes a crossing roadway safe, and pretty obvious what these things are. The proper roadway crossing would have a marked crosswalk. If it's a wide roadway, a median island, have curb extensions to reduce the crossing distance, reduce the curb radiuses to make it easier to cross, reduce the number of travel lanes, provide warning signs, and where it is warranted because of safety, have even pedestrian signals. The students have responsibilities also to follow the system that is laid out for them and walk on sidewalks where they're provided, and where there are no sidewalks, of course, to walk against traffic and not with traffic, and on the extreme leftmost part of the roadway. This is important when considering crossing times. Students walk a little bit faster than older people, but these are some studies that have been done, and this is the faster end, or the average crossing speed for students who do not have disabilities of any sort or another, and this has to be taken in consideration when planning the safe route. Students need to be familiar. You don't want to drop a student into a crossing system or even to a school system without having them familiar with the system as it operates, so they can be aware of the cues and follow those cues. In terms of students with disabilities, the consistency of the system and of information is critical for their safe crossing. There's a program that's being promoted nationwide, and it's called Safe Routes, and this is to not only for student health, but for student safety. The program is called Safe Routes to School, to encourage students to walk to school for not only for their convenience, but also for their health. And this program is being rolled out all over the nation, and in conjunction with this program is what we call the walking school bus, and this is with parents, and of course, weather permitting, the parents guide the students, and it is literally a walking school bus. The children all going together, and they walk together to school. And these are an example of one in the northern climate and in a mid and a somewhat southern climate. When picking the route, sometimes it's done for the convenience of the bus operations and not for the convenience of the safety of the student. And when we pick the routes, we not only want to pick the routes that are convenient for the buses, but we first and foremost want to pick a route that is safe for students to walk. There are paths, there's not too much traffic, it's easy for them to cross the streets, and that where the behavior of drivers is good between the interaction between students and drivers, and don't forget that the students will feel safe and there is no issue in terms of criminal activity. The AA makes some recommendations which are good in terms of crossings and streets where there are no sidewalks. There is a checklist that's been developed by various organizations, and this is a checklist to make sure, and this should be done by parents to make sure they have an obligation also to make sure that wherever their students are being picked up, their children being picked up, it's a safe location, and this is a checklist to ensure that, and if it is not, if this check walking system does not meet this checklist, then you have to get to the school board and make them change it so it does. We want to, in the end, avoid interactions. We want to be able to ensure that there is no interaction between the driver and the student. We don't want anything, as shown in these pictures, to happen to our precious cargo. And we want to be proactive and to ensure that whatever is laid out does not result in this kind of situation. We have to understand that, that students have to be able to detect what's happening, gather information, identify the situation, make a decision, and react to the decision. And this takes time. And the students need to have a lot of time to make these decisions. And, for example, to identify potential problems in the roadway takes at least a second. And for a student to just run out and to not avoid a vehicle, it just takes a second. So seconds count, and we have to make sure that the student is safe from the point it approaches the roadway and to the time where the driver comes into the vicinity, and that the driver has an opportunity to stop and avoid an unintended interaction between themselves and the student. We need to manage these crossings. They need to be safe. They cannot be safe at all times. When there's a question in doubt, then there should be adult supervision at that crossing. If possible, a school crossing guard. If not possible, get parent involvement and help and teach the student how to properly go from home to the school bus stop or to school itself and return. There are special issues with students with disabilities, especially today with buses now being retrofitted to accommodate these students. It's important to ensure that students that have trouble accessing the system, including students with low vision, that their system is designed to accommodate them, and that the motor vehicles and the vehicles operating in the system are plenty aware of the students that are disabled and that they're accessing the system. There's a host of software that's out there that's being used in terms of designing for the bus operation. Unfortunately, this is basically dealing with the bus system and not the walking system, so that whatever the school bus software develops, this has to be superimposed on the information that parents and the school district provides to ensure that the software is cognizant of dangers in terms of other issues that may be generated by having students walking and accessing the system. And this is an example of some of the systems that are out there, and some of the things that these systems are able to provide the student and also to provide the school district. And they are able to efficiently select an efficient route, but this needs to be ground checked called parent check to ensure that their students, their children, are safe on the routes that are selected. The systems, the pupil transportation safety, should have uniform procedures where stops are located and for loading and discharging children, and be cognizant of the safety issues not only on the bus operation, but on the access operation and the student getting to and from the school bus stops. Of course, we don't want to remember having one atom is enough. Having many atoms is intolerable, and we need to minimize the hazards, and these are the hazards that children will encounter on their using the buses or even walking to school. We want to ensure that the school bus routes are safe, that the critical points such as bus loading areas are safe, and that all the hazards that are potential in the system are eliminated, and that the student has clear sailing from home to school and return, of course. Don't forget that the majority of decisions are made by the local school district, and that every parent has input into that system. They elect the school district in most cases, and also can participate in meetings and have influence on the process and the placement of stops. The parents should never leave the total decision when they're not happy with the decision with the school district without providing input, which may be important in terms of improving the safety of the children. Some of the things that have to be taken into consideration in locating bus stops is the configurations of the roadways and the impact of the configuration on the roadway, which will affect whether vehicles stop or don't stop when a bus is stopped. Some of the school district policies which need to be reviewed by parents and by others is what is their policy on private roads or on private property? What special guidelines are there for the kindergarten children? What about stops at corners and mid-blocks, on arterials, in hazard areas, on cul-de-sacs, near railroad crossings? These are all very important and need to be considered on a continuous basis. Of equal importance and most important are the street characteristics. And these are some of the characteristics in locating bus stops that we should avoid. Of course, we should want to, avoid on-street parking. Many accidents occur because students walk out or dart out between two cars, and if you avoid the on-street parking, we avoid that kind of serious issues. Are there any questions out there, Matt?
I don't see any questions in the queue. I just put out a call to questions to the attendees. Carl, I would ask a question of you regarding what you've covered so far in the presentation. In your experience with the litigation that you've handled, where do most of the hazards? Where are most of the hazards in a student's trip from their home to the school?
Other than the bus itself, it's approaching the school bus stop. Children are not given proper paths, and many children are injured by their walking to the school bus stop, or parents dropping them off at the school bus stop, and the kids running out of the car, darting across the street, and being struck by motor vehicles. These are serious issues, and the other area of accidents is in around the school, believe it or not. There are accidents that even occur in the school bus parking lots, or the kids approaching the school, walking, with drivers not giving even though the children have the right of way, the vehicles don't necessarily give the children the right of way, and children, even though they have the right of way, should yield to the vehicles, even though they may be in the right to do the crossing, you can't take any chances. You want to be always on the safe side. You don't want to assume that everybody understands and follows the rules. I see Mr. Rappaport asked a question, are there any downloadable materials we may review? Well, at the end of this presentation, there's a list of sources, and there is lots and lots of information. There's a lot of information in this presentation, and at the end there are the various organizations that generate information that is very usable in understanding school bus safety and students.
And just to follow up on what Carl just said, we will also be sending out a copy of the PowerPoint presentation that will contain all of those references and links. So you'll have a copy that you can use at your desk. So I don't see any other.
Just to mention, this presentation is a bit long, and we may not quite finish. Whatever we don't finish today, we will continue at the part 2. But you will have the presentation, and a lot of the information is self-explanatory. So from the PowerPoint that Matt will be giving you, you will be able to pick up on what we missed.
Okay, why don't we continue on with the presentation of content. We do have a question from John Rappaport, which we will address in the second part of the presentation regarding seatbelts on school buses. Right,
I covered that area. Bus routing procedures, this is some of the things that need to be followed. I'm not going to go into them step by step. They're pretty self-explanatory. Practice. How do you get to Carnegie Hall? How do you get students safely to school? And that's through practice. To ensure that everybody working in the system understands the system. I had one situation where the person who was in charge of the system was a promoted mechanic who was the brother-in-law of the superintendent, and that didn't work out too well. Drop-off and pick-up, very important. There are lots of safety problems, as we mentioned before, accessing and egressing, and you can see, when you have snow drifts and stuff like that, how it eliminates the walking path and can create problems for students. There always should be a clear drop-off and pick-off instructions provided for the first day of school, and a parent should always provide practice. Practice. Now, locating the drop-off areas, these are very important. These are very important features. There's another issue that's coming into play when you have multi-household families where the mother and the father each have created their own household, and on Monday they go to one household, on Tuesday they go to another household. This adds to the complications of picking up and dropping off, and interestingly enough, some of the software now has this in its design to deal with these unusual issues that take place or when it involves after-school activities and things of that nature. So these are some of the key things in terms of locating drop-off. And bus stop safety is very important, how it's designed, how you educate parents into understanding the rules and regulations of using bus stops and enforcing proper behavior on the part of the children to their own safety. Here's some drawings from various school districts around the country where they provide, and basically it's the same information, how important it is, and to know the danger zones around a school bus. And one thing is always important, nothing should ever be taken for granted. If something is going to go wrong, it's the Peter, it will go wrong. There is no such thing as the perfect optimal system. Even if you design the perfect optimal system, when you have human factors involved, the perfect optimal system is never perfect and optimal. And in terms of bus stop accessibility, it should be equitable in terms of use. It should be flexible in use. It should be simple. The information should be easily understood. It should have room for error. And it should involve low physical effort on part of the students. And the size and space should be sufficient to protect the students if it requires the students to use tickets, and in some cases, like in New York City, the students have to use public transportation. They need to get tickets. Sometimes they have to insert their pass into a machine to get a ticket to board the vehicle. As strange as that sounds. In terms of bus stop layout, this is important also, and these are some of the factors that need to be taken into consideration. When laying out a bus stop, it's no different for a school bus as it is for a public transit bus. These things are always important, whether it's a school bus or a transit bus, the same rules apply. As though everybody wants to think that school buses are unique, all buses are unique and also need to be dealt with in that manner. In terms of locating them, these are the various elements that need to be taken in consideration, and also the American Disabilities Act. We sometimes forget that we are also transporting disabled students, and that has to be taken into consideration as well. Also important is the bus stop environment. I like where in some school districts they've created a school bus that looks like a school bus, and they've been kind of innovative and creative, but all the other things need to be taken into consideration as well. The height of the curves, the information, the size of the shelter. In most cases, unfortunately, transit buses, they provide shelter. School buses, rarely do they provide shelter, and probably the school kids need it more than the transit passengers. These are some of the places that school bus stops are not appropriate, where there's a high level of activity, and especially where there are a lack of crossings and an opportunity for students to cross safely, where there's large traffic volumes, and where the speeds are high, and where the sight distance is at a minimum. Don't forget, nothing stops instantaneously. For a vehicle to stop for a student, they have to see the student. There's a perception reaction time, and if they're going 40 or 50 miles an hour, in 2 seconds, that vehicle could have gone 150 feet. So, that is a dangerous situation, and sight distance is really critical. Students need information, and information can be provided from signage and from other methods. Essential information needs to be provided in a form where it's visual, the students can understand it easily. Unsafe student behaviors, students have a job too, and they need to be taught the job. Students who are going to school in the early mornings when it's dark and coming home late at night should definitely not be dressed in black clothing. You want to have conspicuity. You want the students to stand out, and what stands out in the dark is white or iridescent kinds of things. Even having a student wearing a vest, they're inexpensive. Any bicycle shop sells vests. Any store, sports store sells vests. And, may sound like a burden, but could be the difference between life and death, having the student wear one of those safety vests. The injuries on school buses are a whole other matter. A lot of these accidents occurred, as you saw in the article that I showed you in the beginning, where in the city of New York there were some 1,700 school bus injuries. And a lot of these injuries occur because the students are not standing, because the vehicle is not properly operated, maybe the driver is not properly trained, the nature of the braking, the vehicle needs to be braked in a safe manner. If it isn't, students could be thrown. We have these issues of bullying where students are bullied on the bus, and there becomes confrontations. The bus driver loses his chain of attention, and the student may run from the bullying, and the confluence of two issues, the bus driver may stop suddenly, and that poor child gets thrown. In public transportation and school buses, we have a concept called jerk rate, and that is a smooth acceleration and deceleration. If there's a sudden acceleration or a sudden deceleration, what happens is the child gets thrown. And this is not only on the school bus, even on the public bus. So buses have to accelerate smoothly and decelerate smoothly. We showed a picture early on of school bus safety equipment. In addition to the standard safety equipment, there are many accidents that occur to students, what we call slips and falls, because of the nature of the steps. The steps get wet. They're not properly designed. They don't have anti-slip material. The surfaces get contaminated with dirt or with water. And this is one approach to make those steps safe at all times. And this technique was developed by Safeguard Technology using this, what they call luminia, as a tough mineral aggregate on the steps to eliminate slips and falls. The reason that the National Safety Council considers school bus safe is they've developed what they call the compartmentalization system, where the student is protected by a padded seat in the front and in the back. But there have been many studies that have been undertaken that contradict some of this. I believe that it's not something that shouldn't be done, and that seatbelts, although that seatbelts are only required for small children and for small buses, all children should be seatbelted, and these are various seatbelt techniques. You have the three-point system, and you have the belt shoulder system, and I don't think it's an unreasonable thing to require students to be seatbelted or to be restrained, either by lap belts or a combination of lap belts and various other kinds of seatbelt configurations. The argument goes that the full-size buses have the padded seats, the compartmentalization makes seatbelts unnecessary, but I think the American Academy of Pediatrics, which I think knows a little bit about children injuries, they feel that seatbelts should be provided, at least a three-point system, for every child that is on a school bus. There are only a few states. Texas recently came on board, but New York, New Jersey, Florida, Louisiana, Texas, and California, which have several of the largest school districts, New York, Texas, California, and Florida, and New Jersey, they require seatbelts. But what happened to the rest of the country, the other states? Why are they not providing seatbelts? There's a lobby out there. To me, it sometimes sounds like the gun lobby. They say that they are pro-seatbelts, and then there's another lobby out there that's like the NRA for no seatbelts, and they argue, why do we need seatbelts? We haven't proven, what if a bus rolls over and the child gets trapped in the bus, or the bus goes into a water, and the seatbelt is attached, the student will drown. These things don't ever happen. And the anti-seatbelt lobby seems to be winning out in all but 7 states in the United States. Seatbelt restraints, as Mr. Rappaport asked, are important. I think there is no excuse not to have them. There are a lot of information out there on the correct way and the incorrect way to use seatbelts. The National Highway Transportation Safety Administration has a lot of this information, and there are a lot of other organizations, including the manufacturers of the seat belts and the seats. And where they're required, the students should be taught the proper way to use them. And I think this is the most important item. If a student is not taught early on to use seat belts in the school bus, how are you going to encourage them to use seat belts when they're driving their own personal vehicle, or they're riding in a personal vehicle with parents or family friends or in a carpool or something like that. I think that's very, very important. These are some of the various seatbelt systems. The three-point system seems to be most popular. These are some studies where they show how compartmentalization works and doesn't work, and how when you have rollovers, these are, of course, belted and unbelted students, and the difference between a belted and unbelted student, it becomes very obvious that seatbelts are very important, and I think Volvo has made that case very strongly. And these simulations show that how students get thrown across the bus on rollovers and side impacts. And I don't think there is any excuse out there not to have seatbelts on every school bus and a seatbelt for every child and driver. There are various warning systems out there to protect students. You have the signs and the markings and the flashing lights and all the, and we can divide those up into as, we like to call them as passive and active systems. There are detectable warnings in terms of edge markings, signage, passive controls, and active controls, and that's the notice of the, the advance notice of the bus stopping on the bus stop, and in some cases there are roadway markings where lights flash when a bus is at a bus stop, in addition to the bus itself, providing a direct warning. There are a whole host of new signs. The Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices has changed the color of signs to be used in school bus safety from the yellow to this yellow-green, and they've added some additional signs, and these signs should be used liberally and should be placed redundantly. I don't think you could ever have too many signs, and the manual specifically indicates where these signs should be located and in what locations they work best. Here is a table in terms of sight distance. If a vehicle is going 50 miles an hour, these are what the minimum sight distance should be, whether it's 50 or 30 miles an hour, 300 feet, it sounds like a short distance. Don't forget, 300 feet is the same length as a football field, and all of you have seen football games recently, and you know that, when somebody's trying to kick a field goal, they're trying to kick it for 150 feet, and you know that is quite a distance. And so the sight distance becomes very important. If you can't meet the sight distance, there shouldn't be a school bus sight. This is those advanced warning signs that a school bus area is loading, school bus is loading and unloading, whether a school bus is turning around, warnings of school bus area, and these overhead, and sometimes you see similar signs placed in the street, such as the signs in this graphic here, warning of pedestrian crossings. All of these things should be used. None should be skipped upon, and none should be avoided. Here's some examples of placements of signs. Some of the things to take into consideration when a bus is approaching a bus stop, what a bus should be doing. When unloading at a bus stop, again, what a bus should be doing. Departing the bus stop. Where bus A is passing a bus B. And of course, excuse me, when a bus is leaving in the morning before it's going out on its route, it's important also that the bus driver check to see that all the safety equipment is operating and functioning. What's the sense of having all this great equipment if it doesn't work in the first place? There are many equipment issues out there in terms the bus drivers have these concerns. not going to get into too much detail on this. And there's been a number of studies that have been undertaken in terms of site impact and how you can make the bus safe for to avoid these kinds of dangerous situations. This comes back to the question you asked earlier, Matt. Where are the most dangerous places for children to be killed? And of course, it's the school bus loading zones and areas where there are large numbers of children accessing the school bus areas. And the National Academy of Science feels that these areas need to have special attention. These are some of the information that are provided on the bus. Some of the best practices in terms of the school district are indicated in this slide. They should develop policies and guidelines. They should document these policies. Everybody should become familiar with those policies. The state can help as well by enacting legislation to codify those procedures and make sure that all these guidelines are followed. Passengers have their duties to ensure that they are seated while the bus is in motion, that buses shouldn't be overloaded. Seats should be adjusted according to the size of the passengers. I'm very sorry about my coughing. Buses with seat restraints should be used, and that the capacity of the bus should never exceed the capacity that has been allocated by the manufacturer.
Carl, a question here. How often should school districts and or bus companies update their fleet? Because I would imagine that as technology advances and rules and regulations change, it's more and more difficult to retrofit older buses to meet current regs and future regs. How often do school districts turn over their fleet?
Well, buses, don't have a life. The fleets are turned over quite regularly because they put on a lot of mileage. Usually, they're at one time they were passed off to other uses. Once upon a time, we used to send them overseas. I don't know if we still do that. We discard the buses and we send them on to other places, so they should have buses that don't meet our standards. That's kind of an interesting thought when you think about it. If you ever go down to Mexico, you see a lot of our school buses. The fleets turn over pretty regularly, and most of the safety improvements can be retrofitted onto the buses. Things that can't be retrofitted are things that have to do with the structure of the bus. Unfortunately, strengthening the bus sides is something that has to be done in manufacture. It's quite costly to replace the seats. You can easily retrofit seat belts and a lot of the other technology, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, can easily be retrofitted on the bus.
Okay, we have a question here from Kenneth who asks, if there is a bus aid, where should the bus aid sit? Where should that aid be positioned in the bus?
Be positioned in the front of the bus so that the aid can see the activities of the children. Should be facing towards, in some buses they even have a seat that comes down in the aisle for the aid. I've seen that on a few buses. But if you're sitting in the back of the bus, you don't see the children because they're hidden by the seats. So you want to be in the front of the bus so you can see the kids. so that you can stand up and observe any issues. If you stand up when you're in the back of the bus, all you see is the back of the seats, unless you're dealing with high school kids, of course.
How frequently should school districts and bus operators practice emergency procedures, Carl?
They should practice it from day one, when the kids are on the bus for the first time, the first day of school. In some cases, even having a special safety day before even school starts, because in most school districts, the staff and administrators come in before the school. Kids are anxious to get to school, so you could even do it before school starts, like have an orientation. And don't think because you did it once that the students will remember. You have to keep repeating things over and over again. It's just like you tell them what you told them, and you tell them again and over again. You constantly have to practice, just like you practice fire drills on a continuous basis. You have to practice school safety, walking to and from school buses and to school, and riding the school bus, and accessing the school bus, and departing from the school. You got to keep doing it over and over again. Practice makes perfect.
Okay, great. I don't see any other questions in the queue. Would you like to wrap up the presentation?
I would just like to show some of the technology. Just jump ahead quickly. Some of the new technology that's out there that are going to play a very important role. Cameras on the school bus. This has been introduced in public transportation. We have multi-angle cameras to capture information, and this can be used as guidance in the process of training and preparing kids for the training for school safety. For the bus driver, if there's a dangerous condition out there, like a young person crossing in front of the school bus or in front of a car, we have what we call advanced warning collision avoidance systems. With these ultrasonic sensors, make the driver aware, and with TV screens, they can also, in poor lighting conditions, better understand what's taking place in front of the bus. This is something I came across. This is a guy who worked for a school district as a mechanic, and there was a horrific accident to a young person, and he came up with the use of LED lights to enhance student driver conspicuity. So far, it's only been adopted in his local school district, and he's hoping to promote it nationwide. Something that is starting to take hold all across the nation right now is monitoring those individuals. Believe it or not, as you can see from the statistic, 112,000 buses in 28 states found 76,000 illegal passing of school buses, and this translates into 13 million illegal school bus passing. That's when the school buses stop passing on the left. You can see that's an accident waiting to happen. Well, there's a couple of systems out there. The one I seem to like a little bit now, I know a little bit about. It's called Student Guardian System by Redflex. And what happens is when the red arm goes out with the stop sign, the camera goes, and this camera, these two cameras, record the driver's license of the bus of the vehicle that passes the bus. And this is used now as ammunition to go after those individuals that have done this. And they found when they go over these individuals once, this bad habit ends immediately. This is something I worked on many years ago in the Middle East, where there was a lot of concern. One of the problems they had in the Middle East is the parents never knew when their children got to school, because, for example, in Dubai, it could take a school bus 2 to 3 hours to negotiate traffic. This concept has been advanced now in the United States, where a parent can use their smartphone and monitor their student. The student can be tracked, as well as the bus can be tracked. The school district can track the student. Everyone will know where the student is and keep track of the student all along. And this particular system is called Z-Pass. And they got that name from Easy Pass and SunPass, those kind of pass activities. There's a lot of bus surveillance technology out there where the school district can monitor the bus to make sure that everybody is behaving well. They can observe the activities on the bus, and they can observe the activities on part of the school bus driver. And this becomes important. Many times, children are left on the bus at the end of the run, and there have been many instances where the bus is returned to the yard and the child is sleeping on the bus. Well, between the Z-Pass, where the student enters or leaves the bus, and this bus surveillance technology, we get a better handle on observing and listening to what's going on the bus and in real time. This is very, very important. The Chinese have gone a step further with their G-Bus system, where parents are able to check positions and route of the bus. In addition, the bus driver, there was an incident not involving the school bus where an individual took a transit bus out of a New York City bus garage and operated it as a bus driver until he finally, after a couple of minutes of operation and a couple of stops, he crashed the bus. Well, in this case, the bus cannot be operated unless the driver's fingerprint matches the fingerprint that's stored upon the bus. There are some additional statistics, which I will leave to your own time, statistics of what's happening out there. And as Mr. Rappaport had asked, these are the sources, primary sources of information. There are a ton of sources out there. There is no excuse for a school bus to not operate safely and a school district not to operate the system safely. There's plenty of information, and there's no excuses that everyone in the system should have that information. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you for a very informative presentation, and we look forward to the second part of your presentation, which will occur at the end of February. If you'd like to speak to Dr. Berkowitz about a specific matter that you're currently working on, you can contact us here at TASA. Our telephone number is 800-523-2319. As I indicated during the introduction, tomorrow morning I will send out a link to the archive recording of this program. Included in that email will be a copy of the PowerPoint presentation. This and all of our previous webinars can be found in the TASA Knowledge Center. If you visit our website, tasanet.com, and click on the Knowledge Center tab at the top of the page, you'll be directed to our previous webinars. And finally, our next webinar for legal professionals, How to Prepare Your Expert Witness for Deposition, will take place next Tuesday, January 29th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. If you have any follow-up questions or comments, please feel free to email me at mhyde@tasanet.com. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you at future TASA events. Thank you so much.